Hello, my name's Nick Harris. I'm a UK-based born and bred illustrator, still working here, been doing it a long time, about 30 years now. And today we're going to have a crack at doing a scene where you're looking up at things. In this case, I'm going to do a sort of giant pursuing some unfortunate little character. The thing you saw earlier was a sketch just to get me in the mood. And as it said earlier, you can pin reference images up in ArtRage. Unlike some other software, which is very convenient, and you can scale them and zoom in on bits of them and stuff like that. Very good indeed, very helpful. The sketch unfortunately was very straight on, not very dynamic, so I've gone for a more action-based scene, as I just mentioned, with the giant character pursuing something smaller with a view to stomping on it. Perhaps a fairy, perhaps something like that. I tend to work in fairy stories, that kind of thing. That's what I'm known for. I'm a children's book illustrator. For some reason or other, I don't know why I'm thinking of this. I'm thinking of this character wearing a kilt, but I'm not going to do anything untoward. You're not going to see anything nasty, particularly looking up, which you could do. It just appealed to me for some reason. With looking up, you are going to be dealing with foreshortening and overlapping forms. You may have heard these things a lot, but they apply. The thing with perspective is whether you're doing single point, 2-point or 3-point perspective, or whatever perspective you're using, the general rule of thumb is as things get further away, the optical illusion is that they get smaller. We see them as smaller. Now this applies to things looking straight ahead of you and looking down and looking up. Like looking up at this character, the leg and the feet, which is the closest thing towards you, will seem the largest. The stomach, which is quite large admittedly, he's obviously eating a lot of pies, is further away, so is proportionally smaller, and again the head is smaller still, and the shapes in front overlap the shapes behind, like his belly and chest overlap his neck, so much so that you can't see it at all you can see is his head. That's what we mean by overlapping forms. Now I'm very much a drawer rather than a painter, but we could do to get some colour on this, and also it helps with the form, so I've started slapping away some colour using the watercolour tool, which is lovely. I've set a layer to multiply. There is a watercolour blend mode, but I prefer multiply because it's more friendly when it comes to, if you have to transfer it to another program like Photoshop, Photoshop will recognise multiply, whereas it won't recognise watercolour as a blend mode, so it's more versatile. That's the word I was searching for, versatile. I've banged some blue sky behind on another layer. You can see it down there on the right, but I did that with a chalk tool, which will have a texture, so I will blur that a bit later because I don't really want the texture in there. The sky makes too much interest. Then I've also blocking in colour behind the skin tone and the kilt and the feet, but they're on two separate layers just to make it easier. The kilt and that is on a layer in front of the skin tones, so that I can play with them individually on a layer. And then I'll start to tidy up the drawing on the clothes and that a bit in a minute, beefing up the tone a bit, because it needs it. I'm going to have to do something about that knee, the raised knee, because that looks terrible. The form is really odd on that. Note I'm saving again, tidying up the line like I said. Then I will collapse the drawing of the clothes and a copy of the drawing of the guy, just in case I want to go back to it. And you may notice I've also reduced the opacity of the shading. There was a shading layer, separate shading layer. I've knocked that back so I can start building up the colour in it. Drawing always needs tidying. I'll always be tweaking that all the way through. See, I haven't abandoned you. It's just that you would have literally got so bored if I'd shown you all that stuff I was doing there, fiddling about, as I'm carrying on fiddling about now, really. I'm building up the tone some more, tidied up the lines some more. If you see bottom right, I'm considering a little joke, having the giant about to stand on the girl, but the girl about to stand on a character that's even smaller. But I probably won't go with that. Playing with the idea of having another character running off to the left, but she'd have to be quite large, so abandon that for the moment. And so I'll try an archer cooping down, having a go at the giant, trying to defend her friend. But even so, she's still relatively small, and I don't know if I'll be able to make her work because of the placement of his arm and her head. But there's going to be conflicting shapes, a bit awkward. As you see, I'm putting in a little bit of background, and it appears to be tapering inwards, as in 3-point perspective would be things. Tall buildings seem to lean together, and with such a low eye level, you can get away with this a bit. And it's an exaggerated form of perspective, but it works for this kind of effect. The giant himself is leaning back slightly, so if he was standing up straight, his head would be off the top of the picture. But I quite like that because it gives a more exaggerated look. The foreshortening gives that effect in this particular case because I've exaggerated that much more. Blocking in some of the colours of some of the foreground features. It's nothing in particular, it's supposed to be a few abandoned buildings because he's been going on stomps before and have made a bit of a mess of their village. What an unpleasant chap. Saving regularly. For this to work, I need to have a good texture on the ground, so it brings the ground towards you. Because in reality, he's not actually done. I'm sorry, I'm just scratching my back. That's what the straining sound is. In reality, he's not that detailed. If you close on him, it's all quite loosely drawn. You can see how loosely drawn she is. I'm tidying her up a little bit, but I don't want to give her. I want to give her the same sort of level of attention as him, otherwise it won't work as an image overall. She needs to look suitably distressed. Don't ask me what she's wearing. I think she's been to Keep Fit class. Wasn't quite sure what to have her wearing. I was thinking kind of fairy types, but they're not really fairies. If they were fairies, they'd be able to fly. We wouldn't be in this fix, would we? You should notice I've put a fair amount of detail comparatively on the bottom of his shoe because I want you to look at that. Like scuff marks, put the nails in the bottom of his heel. So he goes to a good cobbler. Looks after his shoes. Pull back again so you can see the overall scene. You need to zoom in and out a lot, otherwise you can sort of lose where you are in it. Get too focused on one part and build that up when it doesn't really need it. Again, same theory as you need texture on the floor. I want texture on the walls in the foreground to bring them closer, so that the eye looks at them as you would be able to see detail if you were close up. Farther away, unless you've got great eyesight, you can't see as much detail. Still struggling with the archer a bit. I know what I'm drawing at the moment is the building, but no, I don't manage to make this archer work. It's just I can't quite get the angle right from where we are without getting in all sorts of problems with her shape, crossing over his hand and all getting a bit awkward. It's a shame because I quite like the pose, but she would need to be quite a bit bigger really, because she's supposed to be closer to you than the figure in purple. Again, you are looking up slightly at her. The figure in purple, because she's further away, you don't notice that you're looking up at her so much. See, I turn layers on and off every now and again just to make sure I'm working on the right one. If I was organised like I should be, and I do occasionally, I will name marker layers, which is always a good habit. I've said this before in other videos. Label... Oh, why am I stuttering? Label layers, two L's, label layers so that you know where you are. Otherwise, as I often do, you will find you're working on the wrong layer and then you have to go back on yourself and do lots of undos, which in ArtRage is great. You've got infinite undos. You can undo, same as in Mischief. They do that as well. Infinite undos, but it's a bit tedious. You don't want to be doing that. It's a waste of time. Now to push him back, I really want. I've done it a bit already. Some dust over his leg. I've put like a haze over his leg because that aerial perspective is another way of pushing things back. But I've made the sky more kind of misty and ethereal, little wispy clouds. That's just done with the chalk tool here. We're just smudging with the wet blender. They're nice tools for doing stuff like this. It suits stuff like that. And it's a fairly coarse-ish paper texture. I've got. I think it's watercolor paper I'm using on this. One of their basic watercolor papers. There you go. I've tried a slightly different version of the girl, and she's still not quite working. So we've gone to this. Flip. Gone back to the running girl again. Again, she's got her strange leotardy clothes on. Yeah, I've stopped doing it live because it was taking too long. I would never have got it in the length of video I was intending to do. So we've got blending JPEGs, and you will just see a gradual progression of the girl getting a bit more detailed, looking a little bit more worried, having a bit more definition. Now you see I've got the texture on the floor and on the walls that I was looking for to bring it forward, and we're nearly where I'm going to stop because it's a limited time video I'm doing here. But hopefully you do get the gist. It's about overlapping forms and foreshortening in this particular case. I hope this gives you some ideas to do some of your own stuff, and we'll see that soon. Catch you next time. Bye!